Horrifyingly, a stunning, elegant woman about to marry Chicago's most powerful mafia boss secretly slips deadly poison into her fiancé's coffee cup, right in the middle of a crowded restaurant in front of dozens of witnesses. Can you imagine it? A poor, struggling waitress, a single mother living on the edge of homelessness with her 6-year-old son, barely surviving the freezing Chicago winter, suddenly spots the plot and screams a warning that saves the life of the city's most dangerous man. In that single moment, her life changes forever. From a rundown studio apartment beside icy Lake Michigan, she is pulled into a world of blood-soaked crime, burning passion, and deadly revenge from a rival family. Can true love really conquer everything when the gap between extreme wealth and desperate poverty is so vast? When a mafia boss sacrifices his entire criminal empire for justice and to protect her, while the woman who once went hungry becomes the one who ultimately saves his soul? Dive into this heart-wrenching, dramatic, and hopeful story right now. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. All right, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. The wind off Lake Michigan in late October of the year 2025 cut through the thin walls of the tiny studio apartment in Chicago's uptown neighborhood like a knife. Elena Harper, 29 years old, fair-skinned with tired blue eyes and hair that hadn't seen a proper cut in months, huddled under a threadbare blanket on a sagging mattress that served as her bed. The electricity had been shut off again 2 days ago for non-payment, and the only light came from a dying candle stub on an overturned milk crate that doubled as a nightstand. Beside her, 6-year-old Luca slept fitfully, his small body curled into a ball for warmth, his cheeks hollow from too many meals of plain oatmeal or discounted day-old bread from the corner store. Elena's life had narrowed to a daily grind of survival. By day, she waited tables at Gino's Trattoria, an old-school Italian restaurant in Little Italy that somehow stayed open despite the changing neighborhood. Tips were scarce in the off-season, and after rent, bus fare, and Luca's school supplies, there was never enough. The landlord had taped another eviction notice to the door last week, 30 days to pay 3 months back rent or get out. She had cried quietly in the bathroom at work that night, splashing cold water on her face so no one would notice the red eyes. Poverty wasn't new to Elena. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 18, leaving her with nothing but debt and a baby on the way from a boyfriend who disappeared the moment the test turned positive. She had fought, community college classes at night, food pantries, government assistance that barely covered formula. But the last year had been the worst. A bout of pneumonia for Luca had wiped out her savings, and the medical bills still came every month like clockwork. She was thin now, her collarbones sharp under faded sweaters, her hands chapped from washing dishes at home to save quarters at the laundromat. Sleep came in shallow bursts, haunted by dreams of warmer places that always slipped away upon waking. Yet Elena kept going. For Luca. She read him library books by flashlight, sang soft lullabies when the heat didn't work, told him stories of a better tomorrow, even as despair gnawed at her insides. Her voice, when she spoke to customers at the restaurant, was always polite, soft, almost timid, a habit born of knowing how quickly kindness could turn to judgment when people realized how poor you really were. Across the city, in a fortified penthouse atop a gleaming Gold Coast tower, overlooking the same lake that mocked Elena with its cold beauty, Vincent Moretti stared out at the lights of Chicago, spreading like diamonds on black velvet. 44 years old, fair-skinned, with sharp features and dark hair just beginning to silver at the temples, Vincent commanded respect and fear in equal measure. He was the boss of the Moretti family, one of the last old-line Italian-American organized crime syndicates still holding power in the city. His logistics companies, legitimate on paper, moved goods across state lines with ruthless efficiency, while beneath that facade, protection rackets, high-stakes gambling, and carefully controlled distribution kept the money flowing. Wealth surrounded him. Italian marble floors, original artwork on the walls, a climate-controlled wine cellar stocked with bottles worth more than most people's annual salaries. His suits were custom-made in Milan, his watches Swiss masterpieces. Men jumped at his quiet commands. Rivals thought twice before crossing territories he claimed. But none of it filled the hollow space inside him. 10 years earlier, a car bomb meant for Vincent had taken his wife Sophia and their unborn daughter. He had been late to dinner that night, delayed by a meeting that couldn't wait, and the explosion had erased his future in a ball of fire and twisted metal. The guilt was a living thing, gnawing at him constantly. If he had been on time, if he had walked away from the life sooner, if he had protected them better. Remorse consumed him in quiet moments, a violent emotional storm that he buried under layers of control. He had thrown himself deeper into the family business, becoming harder, colder, more untouchable. No relationships lasted. No one got close enough to see the torment behind his steel gray eyes. His mother, Rosa, now in her 70s and living in a protected suburb, was the only person who still reached him. She would call, her voice gentle but firm, urging him to find peace, to let someone in. "You're not meant to be alone forever, Vincenzo," she would say. He would listen silently, the conflict raging inside, wanting to honor her, wanting to believe life could hold something soft again, but terrified that anyone he loved would pay the ultimate price for his sins. Vincent's only escape from the weight was a weekly ritual. Dinner alone at Gino's Trattoria in Little Italy. It was neutral ground, a place his father had loved before him, where the red sauce tasted like childhood and no business was ever discussed. He sat in the same corner booth, ordered spaghetti with meatballs and a glass of Chianti, and for an hour pretended he was just a man enjoying a meal. The staff knew who he was, everyone in the neighborhood did, but they treated him with careful respect, and he tipped generously. One crisp autumn evening, as rain streaked the windows of the restaurant, Vincent watched the door open and Elena hurry in, late again because the bus had broken down. She apologized breathlessly to the manager, tying on her apron with shaking hands. Vincent noticed her, the way she moved with quiet efficiency despite obvious exhaustion, the soft politeness in her voice when taking orders, the protective glance she cast toward the back where Luca sometimes waited for her shift to end with a coloring book. Something stirred in him, unexpected and unwelcome. She was nothing like the polished women who orbited his world. Thin, pale, with shadows under her eyes that spoke of endless worry. Yet there was resilience in her posture, a quiet strength that made his chest tighten. He found himself watching her more closely that night, noting how she saved part of her own meal to wrap up for her son, how her smile, rare but genuine, lit her face when a regular customer asked about Luca. The inner conflict hit him like a wave. Guilt surged first. How dare he notice anyone when Sophia was gone because of him? Then remorse, sharp and violent, for the life he led that kept him isolated. But beneath it, something new and dangerous bloomed. An overwhelming surge of protectiveness toward this stranger who clearly needed help no one was giving. He left a $200 tip under his plate, more than usual, and told himself it was just charity. But as the weeks passed, Vincent returned more often. He began timing his visits to coincide with Elena's shifts. He watched her struggle quietly, seen her wince when counting tips that wouldn't cover the electric bill, heard her soft voice on the phone, arranging payment plans she couldn't meet. Each observation tore at him, intensifying the turmoil inside. He, who could make problems disappear with a phone call, felt powerless against the everyday cruelties grinding her down. The gap between his penthouse world and her freezing apartment felt obscene, humiliating in its unfairness. One night, as snow began to fall early, unusual for October, Vincent lingered after closing. Elena was cleaning tables, Luca asleep on folded coats in the corner booth. The manager had stepped out. Vincent approached slowly, his presence filling the empty restaurant. "You shouldn't be walking home in this," he said quietly, his deep voice carrying concern he couldn't hide. Elena startled, turning with wide eyes. Up close, he could see how thin she really was, how the cold had chapped her lips. Fear flickered across her face, mixed with confusion and that deep disorientation of someone accustomed to bad luck, expecting the worst. "We manage, sir," she whispered politely, voice timid, eyes downcast. "The bus stop isn't far." Vincent's heart twisted violently. The honorific "sir" from someone who couldn't be more than 15 years younger than him. The exhaustion in her posture. It was too much. Guilt crashed over him again, mingled now with a fierce, passionate need to shield her from the world that had been so unjust. "Let me drive you," he insisted gently. "It's no trouble." She hesitated, guarded curiosity warring with fear. Powerful men didn't offer rides to waitresses without wanting something. But the snow was thickening, and Luca was shivering even in sleep. After a long moment of inner torment, dizziness from exhaustion, numbness from cold, she nodded once, barely. As Vincent led them to his black SUV with tinted windows, carrying Luca carefully when Elena's arms shook too much, something shifted irrevocably inside him. The surge of love hit like lightning, intense, overwhelming, passionate from that very first moment of true proximity. He would protect her, whatever the cost. The remorse for his past life, the guilt over Sophia, the violent conflict of wanting something good in a world he'd made dangerous, all of it crystallized into one burning resolve. Elena, buckling Luca in the warm leather seat, felt a confusing mix of relief and terror. The car smelled of expensive cologne and safety, a world so far from hers it made her head spin. As Vincent pulled away from the curb, glancing at her with eyes that held depths of emotion she couldn't yet understand, she wondered what price this kindness would demand. Outside, rival scouts from the Genovese family noted the unusual stop at the restaurant, radios crackling with reports. The first threads of danger began to weave around the fragile connection forming in the warm cocoon of the SUV, cutting through Chicago's snowy night. The first real snow of the season fell softly over Chicago in early November of the year 2025, blanketing the glittering ballroom of the Drake Hotel in a hush that felt almost sacred. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across tables laden with white orchids and gold-rimmed china. The annual gala for the Children's Memorial Foundation drew the city's wealthiest, corporate titans in tuxedos, socialites in couture gowns, politicians smiling for cameras. Vincent Moretti stood near the bar, a glass of untouched bourbon in his hand, his broad shoulders filling out a midnight blue Brioni tuxedo that cost more than most people earned in a month. He nodded politely to donors who approached, his voice low and controlled, but his steel gray eyes scanned the room with habitual caution. That was when he saw her. Isabella Rossi glided through the crowd like someone who belonged nowhere else. 35, tall, with glossy chestnut hair swept into an elegant chignon and an emerald green silk gown that hugged her figure perfectly. She carried herself with the effortless confidence of old money, though Vincent knew from a quiet background check that her wealth was newly earned. Art curation for private collectors, auctions at Sotheby's, connections across Manhattan and London. She laughed easily at something a museum director said, her smile bright and practiced, her eyes sharp and assessing. Their introduction was orchestrated by a mutual acquaintance, a gallery owner who owed Vincent a favor. Isabella extended a manicured hand, her gaze direct. "Mr. Moretti," she said, voice smooth as velvet. "I've heard so much about your appreciation for Italian Renaissance pieces." Vincent took her hand, feeling the cool confidence of her skin. Something stirred in him. Interest, yes, but also the old wariness. Women like Isabella usually wanted something: status, protection, excitement. Yet she spoke intelligently about Caravaggio and Bernini without once mentioning his reputation. She listened when he spoke, head tilted slightly, as though every word mattered. For the first time in years, Vincent felt the tight knot in his chest loosen, just a fraction. Over the following weeks, Isabella became a careful presence in his life. Private dinners at Gibson's Steakhouse or Tavern on Rush, where she never glanced at the prices. Walks along the lakefront trail, wrapped in cashmere coats, her arm lightly linked through his. She asked about his mother, Rosa, remembered details he rarely shared, sent thoughtful gifts, a rare book on Sicilian history, a bottle of Brunello di Montalcino from a vineyard he had once mentioned loving. She never pushed for more than he offered, never asked about the late-night calls or the armed drivers who shadowed them at a distance. To Vincent, it felt like breathing fresh air after years underwater. The gnawing remorse over Sophia quieted in Isabella's company. The violent inner storm, the guilt that he had failed the only woman he had ever truly loved, eased when Isabella looked at him with admiration instead of fear. He told himself this could be different, safe, controlled. He began to imagine a future where someone stood beside him without paying the price his wife had paid. Meanwhile, across the city, Elena Harper's world shrank smaller with every passing day. The eviction notice had turned into reality. On a gray morning in mid-November, the landlord changed the locks while she was at work. She returned with Luca, clutching a Happy Meal toy a kind customer had bought him, only to find their few possessions piled on the sidewalk in black garbage bags. The super shrugged helplessly, "Owner's orders, lady," and walked away. Elena stood in the cold, snowflakes melting on her thin coat, dizziness washing over her as the unfairness hit like a physical blow. Claw began to cry quietly, confused and shivering. She gathered what she could carry: 2 bags of clothes, Luca's stuffed bear, a photo album, and took the bus to a women's shelter in Inglewood that still had 2 emergency beds. The shelter was overcrowded, noisy, the air thick with disinfectant and despair. Elena lay awake on a narrow cot, Luca's small body pressed against hers for warmth, listening to strangers cough and argue through thin walls. Shame burned in her throat. She had tried so hard, double shifts when she could get them, skipping meals to buy Luca winter boots, and still it wasn't enough. The absurdity of it tore at her. 1 illness, 1 slow month of tips, and everything crumbled. Her body ached from exhaustion, her stomach hollow, her mind numb with the effort of not breaking down in front of her son. At Gino's trattoria, the manager cut her hours. "Business is slow," he said, avoiding her eyes. She knew the truth. Regulars complained about the sad waitress, and the owner wanted cheerful faces. Tips dwindled to almost nothing. Some nights, she and Luca ate saltines with peanut butter for dinner, saving the last slices of bread for his school lunch. Yet Vincent kept coming. He arrived more frequently now, always alone, always in the same corner booth. He watched Elena move between tables with quiet efficiency, Noticed the new shadows under her eyes, the way her apron hung looser on her thinning frame. Each observation struck him like a fist to the chest. His wealth, private jets, offshore accounts, a wine collection worth millions, felt obscene against her visible struggle. Guilt surged hotter than ever. He could fix this with a phone call, yet he hesitated, torn between the overwhelming need to protect her and the terror that his world would destroy her as it had Sophia. One December evening, as Elena cleared his table, Vincent caught her wrist gently when she turned to leave. She froze, eyes wide with fear and confusion. "You're not eating," he said quietly, voice low enough that only she could hear. "I see it." Color flooded her pale cheeks, humiliation, suspicion, a flicker of guarded curiosity. "I'm fine, sir," she whispered, the polite timidity automatic. "You're not." The words came out rougher than intended, laced with the violent turmoil inside him. Remorse for his own plenty, fury at a world that let a woman like her suffer, and beneath it all, that burning surge of feeling, passionate, possessive, immediate. Love, fierce and sudden, from the moment he had carried Luca to the warm car weeks ago. He released her wrist, hating how she flinched. "Forgive me." Elena fled to the kitchen, heart pounding, dizziness threatening her balance. A powerful man noticing her hunger. It felt dangerous, unreal. Part of her wanted to run. Another part, exhausted and desperate, wondered what it would feel like to be seen, truly seen, by someone who could change everything. Outside, Vincent stepped into the alley for air and walked straight into trouble. Two men in long coats waited near his SUV, Genevieve's colors subtle but unmistakable. The war over Southside gambling had been simmering, messages had been sent. Now they delivered one in person. "Moretti," the older one said, voice calm. "Word is you're getting soft, spending time in neutral spots, bringing attention." Vincent's driver and bodyguard tensed, hands near weapons, but Vincent lifted a palm. No bloodshed in Little Italy. Not yet. "You got something to say? Say it." The second man stepped closer, smile cold. "Boss says stay in your lane, or we widen ours." The standoff lasted seconds that felt like hours. Snow fell between them. Vincent's pulse was steady, but inside, the conflict raged. The old life pulling him back, even as his heart pulled towards something new, something fragile and good. He met their eyes without blinking. "Tell your boss," he said quietly. "If he wants a conversation, he knows where to find me. But cross into my territory again uninvited, and there won't be anyone left to deliver messages." The men backed off slowly, melting into the night. Vincent stood in the cold long after they left, snow gathering on his shoulders. The threat was real. The war was heating. And now, more than ever, he felt the violent tear inside his soul, the need to shield Elena and Luca from the darkness he carried, warring with the passionate certainty that he would burn the city down before letting harm come near them. Inside the restaurant, Elena watched through the frosted window as the men departed. She didn't understand the exchange, only the danger that clung to Vincent like cologne. Fear coiled tight in her stomach, mingled with a confusing ache, an absurd, impossible wish that someone that powerful might truly care about someone as broken as her. The snow kept falling, soft and relentless, covering the city in a silence that felt, for one brief moment, like the calm before everything changed forever. December deepened its grip on Chicago, turning the wind off the lake into something sharp and unforgiving. The city glittered with early holiday lights along Michigan Avenue, but in the narrow streets of Uptown and Englewood, those lights felt like a cruel joke. Elena Harper woke each morning on the shelter cot with Luca's small, cold feet pressed against her side, her body stiff from the thin mattress and the constant chill that seeped through cracked windows. The shelter rules were strict: out by 7 in the morning, back only after 5 in the evening. In between, she and Luca drifted. Public libraries for warmth, free story hours at bookstores, park benches when the weather allowed. Her coat, bought secondhand 3 winters ago, had a tear under one arm that let the wind slice straight to her skin. She had lost more weight, her wrists looked fragile, her face gaunt in the cracked mirror of the shelter bathroom. At Gino's Trattoria, the Christmas rush brought crowds, but not mercy. The manager scheduled her for the worst shifts, late nights when tips were drunk and stingy, early lunches when businessmen hurried. One evening, just before closing, the cook accidentally spilled scalding marinara on her forearm. The burn blistered immediately, red and angry. The manager handed her a bag of frozen peas and told her to walk it off. No workers' compensation forms, no paid time off. She wrapped the arm in a clean dish towel, swallowed the pain, and finished wiping tables, because rent at the shelter was due in cash every Friday, and she was already 2 weeks behind. Vincent Moretti watched it all from his corner booth, the turmoil inside him growing darker and more violent with every shift. Isabella Rossi had become a steady fixture in his life. She accompanied him to holiday parties at the Union League Club, her arm elegantly linked through his, her laughter bright among crystal and candlelight. She spent nights in the Gold Coast penthouse, leaving traces of French perfume on silk sheets that cost more than Elena earned in a month. She spoke of weekend trips to Aspen or Palm Beach, of acquiring a new Basquiat for a private collector. Vincent listened, nodded, even smiled, but the remorse gnawed deeper. Every moment with Isabella felt like betrayal. Betrayal of Sophia's memory, betrayal of the quiet, desperate woman who served his coffee with trembling hands. He could not stop coming to Gino's. Each visit, the contrast tore at him more brutally. The restaurant's warmth, garlic and oregano in the air, Frank Sinatra crooning softly from hidden speakers, felt obscene against Elena's visible suffering. He noticed everything now. The way she flinched when the burn on her arm brushed a tray, how she saved half her staff meal for Luca, how her eyes, once softly curious, now carried a permanent glaze of exhaustion. The passionate surge that had struck him the night he drove them home had only intensified, burning, possessive, overwhelming. He woke thinking of her face. He dreamed of carrying her and Luca away from cold shelters and scalding sauce, of giving them safety, warmth, everything. Yet the guilt was a living blade. His world had killed Sophia. How could he dare pull Elena into it? One bitter night in late December, snow piling against the restaurant windows, Isabella joined Vincent at Gino's for the first time. She sat opposite him in the booth, immaculate in a camel cashmere coat, diamonds glinting at her ears. Elena waited on them, voice soft and polite, hands careful around the hot plates. Vincent watched Isabella's reactions closely, the way her perfect smile tightened when Elena refilled water glasses, the way her eyes flicked dismissively over Elena's worn shoes and chapped hands. When Elena stepped away, Isabella leaned forward. "She's very attentive," Isabella said lightly, but her tone carried an edge. Almost too much. Vincent's jaw tightened. "She's good at her job." Isabella laughed softly, reaching for his hand. "Of course, darling." But Vincent saw it, the cold calculation beneath the warmth, the same look she gave servers who lingered too long, rivals who spoke out of turn. A quiet alarm sounded in his chest. Later, as Isabella visited the ladies' room, Vincent paid the check. Elena approached hesitantly, burn bandage peeking from her sleeve. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, eyes downcast. He caught her gaze for a moment, really looked. The exhaustion, the quiet dignity despite everything. His heart twisted violently. "Elena," he said, voice low, "are you safe? You and your boy?" Color rose in her pale cheeks, shock, fear, a flicker of guarded curiosity. No one powerful had ever asked. She opened her mouth, closed it, dizziness threatening her balance from sheer surprise. "We're managing," she managed, voice timid. He wanted to press, to demand truth, to fix it all right then. Instead, he nodded once, leaving a $500 tip folded beneath the plate. When Isabella returned, her smile was flawless, but Vincent's inner storm raged louder. 2 nights later, the unfairness struck Elena again. The shelter director pulled her aside after curfew. A new family, mother with 3 children, fleeing domestic violence, needed the beds. Policy was first come, first served for emergencies. Elena and Luca were asked to leave. No anger in the director's voice, only tired apology. Elena stood outside in sub-zero wind, Luca crying softly against her neck, their few belongings in plastic bags. No rooms left at other shelters, waiting lists miles long. She walked the streets until a 24-hour diner let them sit in a corner booth if she bought coffee. She nursed 1 cup for hours, Luca asleep on her lap, her body shaking from cold and numb despair. At 2 a.m, headlights cut through the diner window. Vincent's black SUV pulled up outside. Impossible coincidence, yet there it was. He had been driving sleepless streets, tormented by thoughts of her, when he spotted her silhouette through the glass. He entered quietly, coat unbuttoned despite the cold, presence filling the empty diner. The waitress on graveyard shift recognized him, backed away respectfully. Elena looked up, eyes wide with horror and confusion, tears frozen on her lashes. "Vincent, Mr. Moretti," she whispered, voice breaking. He knelt beside the booth, careful not to startle Luca. The sight of them, freezing, homeless, utterly defeated, ripped through him like gunfire. Guilt, remorse, love, all collided in a violent, tearing wave. "You're coming with me," he said, not a question. Fear flashed across her face, suspicion, anxiety. "We can't, I don't, you can." His voice was gentle but iron. "Tonight, you're safe." Outside, 2 Genovese cars idled across the street, scouts tracking his movements, looking for weakness. When Vincent emerged carrying Luca and guiding Elena with a protective arm, the scouts radioed immediately. 1 car pulled forward boldly, blocking the SUV's path. Vincent handed Luca gently to his driver, then stepped into the street. Snow swirled under streetlights. "Move," he said quietly. The driver smirked. "Boss says you're distracted lately. Soft spots are dangerous." Vincent's men emerged from a second vehicle. Tension crackled. No weapons drawn, yet, but the threat hung heavy. "Tell your boss," Vincent replied, voice deadly calm. "If he comes near what's mine again, there won't be a messenger left to carry warnings." The standoff lasted seconds that stretched like hours. Elena watched from the warm SUV, heart pounding, dizziness from cold and shock making the world tilt. Powerful men facing off because of her. Impossible, terrifying, unreal. The Genovese car reversed slowly, disappearing into the night. Vincent returned, snow in his hair, eyes fierce with emotion he could barely contain. He slid in beside Elena, pulling a cashmere blanket from the seat pocket around her and Luca. She stared at him, tears falling silently. Confusion, fear, and something new, something dangerous and warm she dared not name. Where are we going?" she whispered. "Somewhere warm," he said simply. "Somewhere safe." As the SUV pulled away, Vincent looked at her thin face, illuminated by passing streetlights, and the passionate surge inside him burned hotter than ever. Love, immediate, overwhelming, fierce, tore at every defense he had left. He would protect her whatever the cost, even if it meant burning his world down. Elena leaned her head against the window, numb and trembling, the unfairness of her life and the impossible kindness of this moment colliding until she could barely breathe. The city lights blurred past, carrying them toward a future neither could yet imagine. The first weeks of the new year 2026 arrived in Chicago, wrapped in ice and glittering promise. Michigan Avenue sparkled with post-holiday sales, luxury boutiques displaying diamond necklaces in velvet windows, while the Gold Coast penthouses glowed warmly against the frozen lake. Vincent Moretti's world had never looked more polished. Isabella Rossi moved through it with effortless grace, attending board dinners for his legitimate shipping companies, charming captains of industry, her laughter bright in rooms filled with Cuban cigars and aged scotch. She selected a 10-carat Asher-cut diamond from a private jeweler on Oak Street, the stone catching light like captured winter sun. Vincent proposed on a private yacht chartered for New Year's Eve, the Chicago skyline exploding in fireworks behind them as Isabella tearfully whispered yes. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple, power and elegance united. Rosa Moretti, visiting from her protected suburban home, smiled cautiously and told her son he finally looked almost happy. Vincent wanted to believe it. He told himself Isabella understood the boundaries of his life, that she wanted only the man, not the empire. Yet in quiet moments, alone in his study overlooking the city lights, the remorse clawed deeper. Sophia's face haunted him more than ever, accusing. How could he build something new on ground still stained with old blood? The violent conflict inside him raged, the passionate, burning love he felt for Elena Harper, impossible, overwhelming, growing fiercer every day, warred with the careful future he was constructing with Isabella. He buried the turmoil under layers of control, but it tore at him nightly. Elena Harper, meanwhile, had been lifted from the street into a reality she could scarcely comprehend. Vincent installed her and Luca in a furnished two-bedroom apartment in a secure Lincoln Park high-rise, one of his legitimate properties, managed through layers of shell companies. The rent was covered anonymously, utilities paid in advance. The refrigerator arrived stocked, fresh fruit, whole milk, real meat. Luca received new clothes, warm boots, a pediatrician visit that cleared lingering coughs from shelter nights. Elena woke each morning in a real bed, with clean sheets, hot water that never ran cold, heat that actually worked. For the first days, she walked the rooms in silent shock, touching countertops as if expecting them to vanish. Dizziness came in waves, disorientation from the sudden absence of hunger, fear that this kindness carried hidden strings. She still worked at Gino's, terrified of accepting charity without earning it. Vincent did not argue. He simply appeared more often, always leaving tips that covered a week's groceries. His presence filled the restaurant like quiet thunder. Elena's voice remained soft and timid when she spoke to him. "Thank you, sir. Can I get you anything else?" But her eyes held new questions, guarded curiosity, anxiety, the slow thaw of someone who had learned not to trust good fortune. One frigid January evening, after her shift, Vincent waited outside in the Suve. Snow swirled under street lamps. Elena emerged, coat buttoned to her chin, Luca's small hand in hers. "Let me take you home," Vincent said simply. She hesitated, breath clouding in the cold. Suspicion flickered. Powerful men always wanted repayment, but Luca's cheeks were red from wind and the bus was late again. She nodded once. In the warm leather interior, silence stretched. Vincent watched her profile, the way exhaustion still shadowed her eyes despite better meals. The passionate surge hit him harder than ever, love so intense it felt like pain. He wanted to pull her into his arms, promise the world, erase every cold night she had endured. Instead, he gripped the wheel tighter, remorse and guilt tearing violently inside. Isabella's ring on his nightstand, Elena's quiet suffering in his city. "You don't have to do this," Elena whispered suddenly, voice trembling. "Any of it." Vincent met her eyes. "I know." The honesty in his voice unsettled her more than gratitude would have. Confusion swirled, numbing, dizzying. Why her? What could a man like him possibly see in someone broken and poor? Outside, danger shadowed them. A black sedan followed at a distance. Genovese scouts, emboldened by rumors of Vincent's engagement and perceived distraction. When the SUV stopped at a red light near Old Town, the sedan pulled alongside. windows lowered just enough for recognition. The passenger stared openly, phone to ear, message clear. "We see you." Vincent's driver tensed. Vincent lifted a hand, steady. The light changed. The sedan fell back, but did not vanish. Vincent's jaw tightened. The threat was escalating, and now Elena and Luca rode in his car. The inner tearing became unbearable. Love for Elena pulling him toward light, the darkness of his life threatening to swallow her whole. Another unfair blow struck Elena days later. The shelter where she had stayed filed a report, standard procedure for unaccompanied exit with a child. Child services appeared at Gino's during lunch rush, 2 caseworkers in neat coats asking quiet questions. Had she been living on the streets? Was housing stable now? They needed to inspect the apartment, schedule interviews. Elena stood frozen behind the counter, burn scar still tender under her sleeve, humiliation flooding hot and numbing. Customers stared. The manager hovered, worried about scene. Tears pricked her eyes, absurd, cruel timing when safety had finally arrived. Vincent entered minutes later, coat dusted with snow. He took in the scene instantly. Without raising his voice, he approached the caseworkers, presence commanding quiet respect. A few low words, a business card from a top family law attorney on retainer, and the immediate pressure eased. Inspection scheduled politely for next week, no removal threatened. Elena watched from across the room, heart pounding with shock and something deeper, overwhelming gratitude mixed with fear. When the caseworkers left, she fled to the kitchen, dizziness threatening her balance, tears falling silently into the sink. Vincent followed slowly, stopping in the doorway. "You don't owe me anything," he said quietly, reading her thoughts. She turned, eyes red. "Then why?" Voice barely above a whisper, timid and pleading. "Because I love you." The words burned on his tongue, passionate and fierce, but he swallowed them. Instead, because it was wrong, and I could make it right. The silence between them stretched, heavy with unspoken truth. That night, Isabella hosted a small engagement celebration at the penthouse, catered from Spiaggia, string quartet in the corner, champagne flowing. Elena's face flashed in Vincent's mind with every toast. Isabella noticed his distraction, smile tightening almost imperceptibly. Later, alone on the terrace overlooking the frozen lake, Isabella slipped her arms around him from behind. "You've been distant, darling," she murmured. Vincent stared at the city lights. "Business," he lied. Her fingers tightened on his shoulders. "We're going to be married. Your burdens will be mine." The words should have comforted. Instead, they chilled him. He saw Elena's timid gratitude, Luca's shy smiles over new toys, and felt the fracture widen, hidden but growing. Across town, Elena tucked Luca into a real bed with clean sheets, then stood at the apartment window watching snow fall. The luxury around her, soft towels, full pantry, heat that hummed reliably, felt borrowed, temporary. Fear coiled tight. What happened when Vincent tired of helping? Yet beneath the anxiety, a dangerous warmth spread when she thought of his eyes, his quiet strength. Confusion tore at her, numbing, violent. She, who had nothing, suddenly protected by the most powerful man she had ever met. It was unfair, impossible, terrifying. And in the shadows of the city, Genevieve's scouts reported back. Moretti's weakness had a face now, a thin waitress and her child. The War Council began to plan. Vincent drove home through empty streets, snow muffling the world, inner turmoil raging like a storm he could no longer contain. Love for Elena burned brighter than any ring on Isabella's finger, tearing his carefully constructed life apart, thread by thread. The fracture was no longer hidden. It was only a matter of time before everything shattered. February winds howled through Chicago like a warning no one heeded. The city dressed itself in Valentine's red, store windows blooming with roses and chocolates, restaurants advertising candlelit dinners for lovers. Gino's trattoria hung simple paper hearts in the windows, the same red sauce simmering in pots that had fed generations. Vincent Moretti booked the entire back room for a quiet celebration. Just him and Isabella, marking 6 weeks since the engagement. He told himself it was the right thing. Focus on the future he had chosen. Yet every mile driven toward Little Italy felt like betrayal, the passionate fire for Elena burning hotter in his chest, tearing him apart with violent remorse. Elena Harper arrived for her shift that evening with Luca in tow. The apartment Vincent provided was safe and warm, but pride kept her working. Child services had cleared the home visit, thanks to Vincent's quiet influence, but fear lingered. If she stopped earning, everything might vanish. Luca sat in the corner booth with crayons and a kids' menu, waiting for closing time. Elena's hands still shook slightly from exhaustion. Better food had softened the sharp edges of hunger, but sleep remained shallow, haunted by dreams of eviction and cold streets. Isabella arrived first, stunning in a crimson dress that cost more than Elena's yearly earnings. She greeted the manager with cool charm, then settled in the private booth, ordering a bottle of Barolo Vincent favored. Elena waited on them, voice soft and polite, eyes carefully downcast. Isabella's gaze lingered on her, assessing, dismissive, then flicked to Luca, coloring quietly. "How sweet," Isabella said lightly. "You bring your child to work?" Elena flushed, humiliation stinging. "Just until closing, ma'am." Isabella smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Vincent arrived moments later, coat dusted with snow, presence commanding immediate respect. He kissed Isabella's cheek, presented a velvet box with sapphire earrings to match her dress. She laughed delightedly, fastening them as Elena refilled water glasses. Vincent's eyes found Elena across the room, brief, burning contact that made his heart lurch. The inner conflict raged, guilt over Sophia, remorse for the ring on Isabella's finger, overwhelming love for the woman who served his table with quiet dignity. Dinner passed in careful conversation. Isabella spoke of wedding venues, perhaps Lake Como in summer, or a private estate in Napa. Vincent nodded, but his mind drifted to Elena moving between tables, burn scar hidden under her sleeve, Luca's small yawns. The disparity tore at him more violently than ever. His wealth could end her struggle in a heartbeat, yet he sat celebrating with another woman. As dessert arrived, tiramisu for Vincent, espresso to finish, Isabella reached into her clutch. Elena, clearing plates nearby, caught the motion from the corner of her eye. A small vial, colorless liquid, tipped quickly into Vincent's demi-tasse. The movement was subtle, practiced. Elena's heart stopped. Horror flooded her, cold, numbing shock. She had seen news stories, knew powerful men had enemies, but this was intimate, deliberate. Vincent lifted the cup. Time slowed. Elena's scream ripped through the restaurant like a gunshot. "Vincent, don't drink it! She poisoned you!" The cup slipped from his fingers, shattering on the tile. Espresso splashed across white linen. Vincent staggered to his feet, hand to throat as the small sip already burned. Isabella's face drained of color, eyes wide with calculated denial. Chaos erupted. Vincent's driver and bodyguard burst in from the front, faces grim. Regulars froze mid-bite. Luca began to cry. Elena stood trembling, dizziness threatening her balance, the enormity of what she had done crashing over her, accusing a powerful man's fiancé in public. Vincent clutched the table edge, vision blurring, but his mind raced clear. The liquid's bitter aftertaste, Isabella's frozen expression, Elena's desperate warning, all connected in one terrifying instant. Pain clawed his chest, but worse was the violent tearing inside. Betrayal by the woman he had tried to build a future with, salvation from the one he truly loved. Isabella stood slowly, voice shaking but controlled. This is absurd. She's hysterical, probably jealous. Vincent's men moved forward. One gripped Isabella's arm firmly. We'll sort this outside, ma'am. Elena backed away, horror and confusion colliding. She had saved him, maybe, but at what cost? Her job gone, perhaps worse. Tears blurred her vision as Luca clung to her legs. Vincent straightened with effort, waving off help. He crossed to Elena in 3 strides, taking her cold hands in his warm ones. You saved my life, he said, voice rough with emotion. The passionate surge overwhelmed him, love fierce and burning, gratitude tearing at every defense. Thank you. She stared up at him, shock numbing her limbs. I saw... He nodded once, eyes locked on hers, raw, exposed. In that moment, the hidden fracture shattered completely. Outside, Genevieve's scouts watching the restaurant radioed frantically. Something had gone wrong. As Vincent's men escorted Isabella to a waiting car for questioning, rival vehicles circled closer. One blocked the alley exit boldly. Vincent guided Elena and Luca toward the front, arm protective around her shoulders. The lead Genovese car pulled forward, window lowering. Trouble in paradise, Moretti? The driver called mockingly. Heard your night didn't go as planned. Vincent stopped, shielding Elena and Luca behind him. Snow swirled under streetlights. His men fanned out. Move the car, Vincent said quietly, voice deadly calm. Or what? You're slipping, boss. Distractions cost. The standoff stretched, tense, electric. Vincent felt the poison's lingering weakness, but adrenaline and love burned hotter. He would not let harm near Elena or Luca. Finally, the Genovese driver smirked and reversed, melting into traffic. Message delivered. They knew weakness when they saw it. Inside the SUV minutes later, paramedics en route, Vincent sat beside Elena, Luca asleep against her from shock and exhaustion. She trembled uncontrollably, tears silent on her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. Your fiancé, I didn't mean... Vincent took her hand again, thumb brushing her knuckles. You meant to save me, and you did. The words carried everything he could not yet say. Love, fierce and passionate, overwhelming remorse for the danger he had brought near her, violent determination to protect her now at any cost. Hospital lights were harsh when they arrived. Tests confirmed a powerful synthetic opioid, enough to kill with a full sip. Vincent recovered quickly in a private room, but the emotional storm raged unchecked. Isabella, under guarded questioning, denied everything with polished tears. But security footage from Gino's, installed years ago for protection, showed her hand clearly. Elena sat in the waiting area, Luca curled on her lap, staring at marble floors that cost more than her old apartment. Confusion tore at her, numbing, dizzying. One moment serving tables, the next saving a powerful man's life, now sitting in luxury she had never dreamed of. Fear coiled tight. What would happen to Isabella? To her job? To this fragile safety? Vincent appeared in the doorway, hospital gown under an open robe, face pale but eyes burning. He knelt before her slowly. You and Luca, you're coming home with me tonight. No arguments. Her breath caught, shock, anxiety, the impossible warmth of being wanted by someone so powerful. I can't, she began timidly. You can, and you will. The quiet command carried no threat, only fierce protection. Love shone raw in his eyes, passionate and intense from the very first moment it had ignited, now blazing uncontrollably. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the city in silence. But inside Vincent's heart, the storm had only begun. The poisoning attempt had shattered every careful lie he had told himself. There was no future with Isabella. There was only Elena, the woman who had seen truth when he was blind, who had risked everything to save him. And he would spend whatever remained of his life keeping her safe. The private hospital on the near north side was a world of hushed corridors, marble floors, and discreet security. Vincent Moretti lay in a suite that resembled a 5-star hotel room more than a medical ward. Fresh flowers on the nightstand, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering lake, monitors humming softly in the background. Doctors in tailored coats assured him the synthetic opioid had been neutralized quickly, full recovery expected within days. Yet the real poison worked deeper, eating at his soul with relentless precision. Isabella Rossi sat in a secure room 2 floors below, flanked by Vincent's most trusted men. Her crimson dress was rumpled now, diamonds removed for safety. She maintained perfect composure, tears carefully placed, voice steady, as she repeated her denial. A terrible misunderstanding. Perhaps someone else tampered with the cup, jealousy from a desperate waitress. The security footage, however, told a different story. Grainy but clear. Her hand, the vial, the quick motion over Vincent's espresso. Vincent watched the recording alone in his room, frame by frame. Each second carved deeper into his heart. The woman he had proposed to under fireworks, the woman he had tried to convince himself could share a future, the betrayal was absolute. Remorse crashed over him in violent waves, for ignoring the coldness Elena had warned about, for nearly dragging another innocent into his dangerous world, for the gnawing guilt that he had failed, again, to protect those closest to him. Sophia's face overlaid Isabella's in his mind, accusing. The inner tearing became unbearable. Love for Elena burning like a brand, remorse for his blindness tearing him apart. He summoned Isabella to his suite under heavy guard. She entered with practiced poise, eyes filling with tears at the sight of him in the hospital bed. "Vincent, darling, thank God you're all right. I've been frantic." He studied her silently, the man who read lies for a living. The passionate surge he had once felt for her was ash now. Only cold clarity remained. "Tell me why," he said quietly. Isabella sat, folding her hands. "I don't know what that girl thought she saw." "The footage, Isabella, your hand, the vial." Color drained from her face, but she rallied. "It wasn't what it looked like. I was adding sweetener. You've been tired. I thought—" Vincent raised a hand. His captain entered with a tablet, playing the video on mute. Isabella watched herself, lips parting. Silence stretched, thick and condemning. Finally, her shoulders sagged. Tears came freely now, real ones. "I didn't want to kill you," she whispered. "Only make you need me more." The pressure from the Genovese, your constant cancellations. I felt invisible, second to everything. Vincent's heart twisted, but not with sympathy. The confession was partial, self-serving. He leaned forward. "There's more." Under hours of quiet pressure, no threats, only relentless truth from footage, phone records, witnesses, Isabella broke completely. She had been approached years earlier by the Genovese family, shortly after Sophia's death. A beautiful art student with debts and ambition offered a future in exchange for one task: get close to Vincent Moretti, gain trust, wait for the right moment. She accepted. Over time, genuine feeling complicated the mission. She convinced herself she had abandoned it, that love for Vincent was real. But when the engagement brought no real priority, when business and territory wars always came first, old loyalties resurfaced, twisted with new resentment. The vial was meant to hospitalize, not kill, force Vincent to rely on her completely while framing rivals. Vincent listened without expression, but inside the storm destroyed him. Betrayal upon betrayal, not just personal, but rooted in the very violence that took Sophia. Guilt consumed him, violent, tearing remorse that his life poisoned everyone it touched. Yet through the pain, Elena's face anchored him, her scream, her courage, the quiet strength that had saved him when he was blind. He dismissed Isabella with a single nod. She was taken away, the engagement ended without drama, evidence secured for whatever path justice demanded. Elena, meanwhile, faced new waves of unfairness. Reporters camped outside Gino's after the story leaked. Mystery waitress saved Chicago businessman in dramatic poisoning. Her name stayed protected, but faces were harder to hide. Customers stared, whispered. The manager, fearing publicity, cut her shifts entirely. Bad for business, he muttered. Elena stood in the empty staff room, dizziness washing over her, numbness spreading. One act of courage, and her fragile livelihood vanished. She returned to the Lincoln Park apartment, still paid anonymously, to find a process server at the door. An old medical bill, previously in collections, had been sold to a new agency. Garnishment threatened. The amount was small to Vincent, crushing to her. Tears came silently as Luca napped. The absurdity tore at her soul. Saved a powerful man's life, lost her job, now facing debt collectors again. Humiliation burned, pitiful, powerless. Vincent appeared that evening, discharged against advice, driven by need to see her safe. He found her at the kitchen table, head in hands over past due notices. Luca played quietly in the living room with toys Vincent had sent. Elena startled at his presence, wiping tears hastily. "I'm sorry," she whispered automatically, voice timid. "You should be resting." Vincent knelt beside her chair, taking the papers gently. The sight of her distress, thin frame tense, eyes red from crying, ripped through him. Love surged, passionate and fierce, overwhelming every other emotion. "This ends now," he said quietly. She shook her head, confusion and fear colliding. "I can't keep taking. You're not taking. I'm giving. Because I want to. Because—" He stopped, the words "I love you" burning unspoken. Outside, danger circled closer. Genevieve's scouts, learning of the failed attempt and Isabella's exposure, saw opportunity. A car followed Vincent's SUV from the hospital, bold now. When he left Elena's building hours later, after quietly arranging bill payments, groceries delivered, a discreet security detail, rival vehicles boxed him at a red light in River North. 3 cars, deliberate, windows down just enough for recognition. "Message from the boss," the lead driver called. "You're vulnerable, Moretti. Soft spots bleed." Vincent's remaining men tensed, ready. He stepped out into the cold, coat open despite lingering weakness. "Tell your boss," he said, voice calm but carrying across snow-muffled street. "The next time he sends someone near what's mine, he won't get them back." The standoff lasted heartbeats. Traffic lights changed. Finally, the cars dispersed, not retreat, but calculation. War was coming. Vincent returned to the penthouse, body aching from poison and confrontation, soul torn apart by conflicting storms, remorse for the danger now threatening Elena because of him, passionate determination to shield her, whatever the cost. In the apartment, Elena stood at the window watching snow fall, Luca asleep behind her. The paid bills on the table felt unreal, safety purchased by a man whose world terrified her. Yet when she thought of Vincent's eyes, the way he knelt beside her chair, warmth spread, dangerous and deep. Confusion tore violently. Someone poor and powerless, suddenly protected by the most powerful man in Chicago. It was unfair, impossible, dizzying. She pressed a hand to the cool glass, tears falling silently. The city glittered below, beautiful and cruel, holding secrets that would soon shatter everything. Vincent, miles away in his empty penthouse, stared at the same skyline. Isabella's betrayal had stripped away the last illusion. There was only one truth left: Elena. His love for her, burning from the first moment, now consuming, demanded everything. He would protect her, even from himself if needed. But the deeper betrayal's roots ran dark beneath the city, and the storm was only beginning. Spring crept slowly into Chicago, the lake ice breaking into shimmering pieces under pale March sun. The city awakened with green buds along the Magnificent Mile and outdoor patios opening on Rush Street. But for Vincent Moretti, the season brought only colder clarity. He stood in the glass-walled study of his Gold Coast penthouse, watching morning traffic crawl far below, the confession from Isabella echoing endlessly in his mind. The deeper betrayal, her original recruitment by the Genovese family years ago, had shattered the last illusion of safety in his world. Remorse tore at him with renewed violence. Sophia dead because of the same enemies, now nearly himself. The gnawing guilt that he drew death to everyone he touched became a living torment. Yet through the storm, Elena Harper's face remained his only anchor. Her quiet courage, her soft voice, the overwhelming love that had burned in him from the first moment, now raging uncontrollably. He made the decision no one expected. Instead of handling Isabella quietly within the family code, Vincent turned every piece of evidence, footage, vial analysis, recorded confession, phone records linking her to Genovese contacts, over to federal authorities. He agreed to testify publicly. The move stunned his captains, terrified his mother, Rosa, and sent shockwaves through Chicago's underworld. Assets frozen pending investigation, legitimate companies scrutinized, old allies distancing themselves. Vincent knew the cost: exposure of parts of his empire, possible charges against himself. But silence felt like complicity now. Isabella's betrayal had roots in the violence he had long accepted. Justice, real, daylight justice, became the only way to begin cutting those roots. Elena Harper watched the news reports from the Lincoln Park apartment, heart pounding with confusion and fear. Headlines screamed, "Prominent businessman survives poisoning, fiancé charged with attempted murder." Her name stayed protected, but grainy restaurant footage showed her scream, her face blurred just enough. Anonymous online comments speculated wildly: mistress, gold digger, hero. Child services called again, routine follow-up given publicity. The caseworker's tone carried new suspicion. Elena sat at the kitchen table, dizziness washing over her, numbness spreading through her limbs. One act of truth, and her fragile stability cracked again. Luca asked why people on television talked about Mommy. She held him close, tears silent, the unfairness tearing violently at her soul. Poor and powerless, now dragged into a world of wealth and danger she never asked for. Vincent visited daily now, no longer hiding behind anonymous help. He arrived with quiet groceries, books for Luca, a pediatrician's reassurance after a lingering cough. Each time, the passionate love in his eyes grew harder to conceal. He watched Elena move through the apartment, still thin, still carrying exhaustion in her posture, and the inner conflict raged, desire to wrap her in permanent safety, warring with terror that his public stand would paint a target on her back. One gray afternoon, federal agents escorted Vincent to the Dirksen Federal Building for preliminary testimony. Elena, summoned as key witness, arrived separately with Luca in tow. The marble halls echoed with footsteps, lawyers in expensive suits rushing past. Elena felt small, out of place, her coat secondhand, shoes worn. Dizziness struck in the elevator. She gripped the rail, breath shallow. A poor waitress testifying against a glamorous woman engaged to one of Chicago's most powerful men. It felt absurd, impossible. In a secure conference room, Vincent waited. When Elena entered, their eyes met across polished wood. The surge hit him like lightning. Love, fierce and burning. Gratitude and protectiveness overwhelming. He stood, ignoring agents. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. She nodded once, voice timid. "Yes, sir." The honorific pierced him. After everything, still sir. He wanted to pull her close, promise forever, but cameras watched, protocol bound them. Testimony began. Vincent spoke clearly. The dinner, the cup, Elena's warning, Isabella's confession. He detailed the Genovese connection without naming active operations, offering enough for conspiracy charges. Isabella, in custody, watched via video link, face pale, composure cracked. Elena's turn came. She took the stand, hands trembling. Voice soft, polite, she recounted what she saw, the vial, the motion, the scream. Prosecutors treated her gently. Defense counsel probed carefully for motive, jealousy. Elena answered honestly, tears threatening. The room's scrutiny felt humiliating. Poor woman accusing wealthy beauty. Yet Vincent's steady gaze gave her strength. Outside, danger escalated. Genevieve's retaliation began subtly. Vincent's legitimate trucking routes delayed by inspections. Anonymous threats to business partners. One evening, leaving the federal building after a long session, Vincent's SUV was followed aggressively through loop traffic. At a stoplight near the river, 2 cars boxed him, windows down, messages clear. "Drop the testimony, Moretti," a voice called, "or we start collecting on debts." Vincent's remaining loyal men tensed. He stepped out into chilling wind, coat open. "You want to talk?" he said calmly. "Schedule it properly. Threaten me again like this, and there won't be anyone left to talk." The light changed. Cars dispersed, but the warning lingered. Elena witnessed part of it from a protected vehicle nearby. Heart pounding, she clutched Luca. Fear coiled tight, horror that her warning had unleashed this storm. Yet beneath, a dangerous warmth, Vincent shielding them, risking everything. Another unfair blow struck days later. An old landlord from her evicted uptown studio sued for back rent and damages, emboldened by publicity. Court papers arrived, thousands owed, wages garnishable. Elena read them alone after Luca slept, numbness spreading until tears came hot and silent. The cruelty felt endless, lifted from streets only to face new debts because she spoke truth. Vincent arrived unannounced, finding her at the table surrounded by legal notices. He read them silently, face hardening. "This stops," he said. She looked up, eyes red. "You can't fix everything." "I can fix this." He called attorneys, top firm, no expense spared. Case dismissed within days on technicalities and quiet influence. Yet the emotional toll lingered. Elena stood at the window later, watching city lights, confusion tearing violently. Someone once sleeping in shelters, now protected by a man dismantling his empire for justice. It was dizzying, unreal. That night, Vincent confessed part of his heart. They sat in the apartment living room, Luca asleep down the hall. Snow tapped the windows. "I'm ending the engagement publicly," he said quietly, testifying fully. "It may cost me everything." Elena's breath caught, shock, fear for him. Why? He met her eyes, love blazing raw. "Because silence let Sophia die. Because you showed me truth matters more than power. Because..." He stopped, voice rough. "Because I can't build anything on lies anymore." The words hung between them, heavy with unspoken feeling. Elena felt the surge in return, warm, terrifying, impossible. A powerful man choosing justice, risking all because of her courage. Outside, federal protection increased. Genovese scouts watched from shadows, planning. Rosa called Vincent daily, voice trembling with worry, yet pride. In quiet moments alone, Vincent stood on his terrace, wind cutting sharp. The public reckoning stripped him bare. Wealth frozen, reputation shifting from untouchable to cooperating witness. Remorse and love collided violently. Guilt for the danger now circling Elena, passionate determination to give her the safety he had failed to give Sophia. Elena, in the apartment Vincent provided, tucked Luca in and stood at her own window. The city glittered below, beautiful, cruel. Tears fell silently, from desperate poverty to this. Protected, seen, perhaps loved, by a man whose world could destroy her. The inner tearing was unbearable, fear and hope warring until she could barely breathe. The reckoning had only begun. Justice demanded its price, and the storm gathered strength. April rain fell in sheets over Chicago, turning streets into rivers of reflected neon. The federal trial of Isabella Rossi dominated headlines. Society beauty faces life for poisoning prominent fiancé, while deeper stories whispered of Vincent Moretti's unprecedented cooperation. Subpoenas flew. Bank accounts froze. Legitimate shipping companies grounded trucks under forensic audits. Old allies vanished into silence. Some turned informant for lighter sentences. Vincent's empire, built over decades with ruthless precision, crumbled brick by brick in full public view. The man who once commanded fear now walked corridors of the federal courthouse flanked by marshals, his wealth evaporating under asset forfeiture orders. Inside, the torment reached new depths. Vincent stood alone in the penthouse most nights, lights off, city glowing below like a kingdom he no longer ruled. Remorse tore at him with violent, unrelenting claws. For the lives his business had touched, for Sophia lost to the same enemies now emboldened, for dragging Elena into the fallout. Guilt over his fading power warred with fierce love for her, passionate, burning, the only light left. He clutched the railing, knuckles white, inner conflict raging like the storm outside. He had chosen justice, but the cost threatened to destroy the one person he now lived for. Elena Harper felt the collapse in quieter, crueler ways. Federal protection meant new rules, no unsupervised outings, escorts to Luca's school, constant check-ins. Reporters still camped near the Lincoln Park building, shouting questions when she appeared. An anonymous blog doxed her old shelter records, from homelessness to hero, complete with photos of her thin frame from charity intake files. Humiliation burned daily. Child Services scheduled yet another wellness visit, paperwork multiplying. A former coworker at Gino's sued for workplace defamation, claiming Elena's actions damaged the restaurant's reputation. The claim was flimsy, but legal fees loomed. Elena sat at the apartment table late into nights, head in hands, dizziness from exhaustion and fear making the room spin. The unfairness was absurd, numbing. Courage rewarded with scrutiny, poverty's ghosts refusing to stay buried. She watched Vincent arrive for visits, coat damp from rain, face drawn with new lines, and felt the violent tear inside her own heart. Gratitude collided with terror. A man losing everything because he chose truth, partly because of her scream that night. Yet when he knelt to Luca's height, reading stories with quiet patience, or when his eyes met hers with raw, unspoken love, warmth spread dangerous and deep. Confusion tore at her, poor, powerless woman suddenly at the center of a powerful man's world. One stormy May evening, the empire's fall accelerated. Federal agents raided remaining warehouses. Loyal captains were detained. Rosa Moretti, evacuated to a secure location, called Vincent in tears, her home surrounded, memories boxed as evidence. Vincent drove through pouring rain to oversee her safety, promising new arrangements. On the return, Genevieve's forces struck. The convoy, 2 SUVs carrying Rosa and essentials, was ambushed on a quiet suburban street. Gunmen in stolen cars opened fire, tires screeching, windows shattering. Vincent's vehicle swerved to block Rosa's. Bullets tore through metal. Vincent took 3 hits, shoulder, side, leg, shielding the door as guards returned controlled response. The attackers fled when sirens approached. Mission to intimidate accomplished. Vincent collapsed against the seat, blood soaking his shirt, vision tunneling. Pain was fire, but worse was the inner storm. Failure again to protect those he loved. As medics worked, he whispered orders. Get Rosa safe. Protect Elena and Luca above all. He flatlined twice in the ambulance. Elena received the call at the apartment. Federal escort, pale-faced. Mr. Moretti's been shot. Critical. The world tilted. She sank to the floor, dizziness overwhelming, numbness spreading until Luca's small hand on her shoulder brought tears. Horror flooded her. Vincent dying because he chose justice, because of the danger his love now brought near her. Confusion tore violently, from cold shelters to this, grief for a man she barely admitted she loved. At the hospital, Elena waited in a secure wing, Luca asleep on her lap. Hours passed like years. When doctors finally emerged, stable but serious, relief crashed with guilt. She entered his room quietly, monitors beeping, Vincent pale against white sheets. He opened his eyes, finding hers instantly. Love blazed through pain, passionate, fierce. You came, he whispered. She stood beside the bed, voice soft, trembling. I had to know. He reached for her hand, weak but determined. I'm sorry for all of this. Tears fell silently down her cheeks. You almost died. Because I finally did something right. The words hung, heavy with truth. His empire gone, wealth seized, body broken, yet his eyes held no regret, only burning love for her. Outside the room, federal protection doubled. Genevieve's messages circulated. Moretti broken, time to finish. Rosa arrived later, face lined with grief and pride. She embraced Elena gently. He chose this path because of you, because you showed him light. Elena pulled back, shock and confusion colliding. I didn't mean... You spoke truth, Rosa said softly, and he listened. In the quiet hours that followed, Vincent drifted in and out. Pain medication dulled the body, but not the soul. Remorse tore deeper. Empire's collapse left loyal men jobless, old debts called in. Yet holding Elena's hand when she sat beside him quieted the storm. Love, overwhelming, passionate, became his only certainty. Elena faced new unfairness days later. With Vincent hospitalized, anonymous threats arrived. Notes slipped under the apartment door, phone calls with heavy breathing. Federal agents intercepted most, but fear took root. Luca woke screaming from nightmares. Elena barely slept, thin frame trembling with exhaustion. The disparity felt obscene. Once freezing on streets, now in luxury under siege because of a powerful man's love. One night, unable to bear the walls, she walked the hospital corridor. Rain lashed windows. She paused outside Vincent's room, watching him sleep. Bandages stark, face peaceful for once. The inner tearing became unbearable. Fear he would die. Fear he would live and drag her deeper into danger. Fear that the warmth growing in her heart was real. Vincent stirred, eyes opening. He saw her silhouette, reached out weakly. Come here. She entered, sitting carefully. He took her hand. I'm selling what's left, he said quietly. Legitimate pieces. Starting over clean. For you. For Luca. Shock numbed her. You can't. I can. I want to. Tears fell. You've lost everything. I've found what matters. The words carried everything. Love fierce from the first moment, now willing to burn the past to ash. Outside, rain eased. City lights glimmered through wet glass. The empire had collapsed. Vincent hovered between life and death. Yet in the quiet room, two broken souls held hands. Poor waitress and fallen king. finding in each other the first real safety either had known. The dramatic fall was complete. What rose from the ruins remained to be seen. Summer heat settled over Chicago like a heavy blanket, the lake breeze offering little relief. Vincent Moretti woke in a federal safe house on the city's far west side, a modest brick bungalow with barred windows and constant surveillance. The penthouse, the yachts, the custom suits, all gone. Assets seized, accounts frozen, legitimate businesses sold at fire sale prices to cover legal fees. He wore simple clothes now, jeans, plain shirts bought off racks. Scars from the ambush marked his shoulder and side, pain flaring on humid days. For the first time in his adult life, Vincent was powerless, penniless, dependent on government protection while awaiting final sentencing recommendations for his cooperation. The fall should have broken him completely. Instead, it stripped away every defense, leaving only the burning core. Love for Elena Harper, passionate, fierce, overwhelming from the very first moment, now the single truth he clung to. Remorse still tore at him nightly, for lives disrupted by his choices, for danger still circling, but guilt quieted when he thought of her courage. He had nothing left to offer except himself, flawed and fallen. Elena Harper arrived at the safe house one sweltering July afternoon, unannounced and defiant. Federal agents had tried to discourage visits, too risky, too complicated. But Elena, carrying a grocery bag of simple ingredients and Luca's small hand in hers, insisted. She had lost the Lincoln Park apartment when anonymous funding stopped, returned briefly to shelter waiting lists before a church program offered temporary basement housing. The unfairness continued relentlessly. A background check for a new waitress job flagged association with ongoing federal case. Application denied. Debt collectors called again over old bills. Luca's school required proof of stable address she couldn't provide. She stood in the safe house kitchen now, thin frame tense, eyes red from sleepless nights, yet posture straight with new resolve. Vincent appeared in the doorway, leaning on a cane, face lighting at the sight of her. The passionate surge hit him harder than ever, love raw and desperate. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly, voice rough. "It's not safe." Elena set the bag down, meeting his eyes. "Neither is anywhere else." She moved in that day, temporary, agents agreed reluctantly, not as charity recipient, but as quiet caretaker. She cooked simple meals, pasta with garden tomatoes, chicken from discount stores, refusing offers of federal stipends. She changed bandages when pain flared, forced him to walk the small backyard for strength, sat with him through nightmares where Sophia called his name. The role reversal shocked them both. Vincent, who had commanded empires, now accepted help pouring coffee when his shoulder seized. The inner tearing intensified, humiliation at his weakness warring with profound gratitude. Every time Elena's gentle hands adjusted pillows or coaxed him to eat, love burned deeper, passionate, possessive. He watched her move through the plain house with quiet efficiency, Luca playing on the floor, and felt violent remorse for the danger his love still brought near them. Elena's own turmoil grew more violent. From desperate poverty, cold winds, empty cupboards, eviction notices, to this, nursing the man who once owned the city skyline. Confusion tore at her daily, numbing, dizzying. She caught herself staring at Vincent's scars, feeling fierce protectiveness surge in return. When he woke, gasping from pain, she held his hand until breathing steadied, heart pounding with emotions she dared not name. Fear lingered. Genevieve's threats still circulated, but beneath it, warmth spread, being needed by someone who saw her fully. One humid evening, pain kept Vincent awake. Elena found him on the back porch, staring at moonlight on the small lawn. "You should rest," she said softly, voice timid yet firm. He turned, eyes raw. I don't deserve this, you taking care of me. She sat beside him, close enough to feel his warmth. You took care of us first. Not enough, never enough. Silence stretched, heavy with truth. He reached for her hand, hesitant, as if expecting rejection. She let him take it. The touch ignited something fierce in both. Love long burning, now flaring bright. Outside, danger watched. Genevieve's remnants, furious at lost territory from Vincent's testimony, tracked the safe house through leaked information. One August night, as thunder rumbled, a car slowed repeatedly past the street. Agents noted it, increased patrols. Vincent saw the reports, face hardening. I should leave, he told Elena quietly. Draw them away. She met his eyes, voice steady for the first time. No, we stay together. The words carried new authority. Role reversed fully. She now the protector in quiet, everyday ways. Unfairness struck again days later. A tabloid published old photos, Elena leaving a food pantry years ago, thin and hollow-eyed, Luca as a baby on her hip. Headline, From welfare to witness protection? Online comments exploded, judgment, speculation. Elena read them once, then closed the laptop, tears falling silently. Humiliation burned, past poverty weaponized because she spoke truth. Vincent found her in the kitchen, shoulders shaking. He pulled her gently into his arms, the first full embrace. She stiffened, then melted, face against his chest. His heart tore violently, remorse for the pain his world caused, passionate love demanding he shield her forever. I'm sorry, he whispered against her hair. She pulled back, eyes searching his. For what? For all of it, for not being able to stop this. You're here, she said simply. That's enough. The words broke something open in him. He cupped her face, thumb brushing tears, love blazing raw. Outside, thunder rolled closer. Another confrontation came at dusk. Vincent walked the block with federal escort, doctor's orders for exercise. A car pulled alongside slowly, window lowering. Genevieve's messenger, young and bold. Word is you're broken, Moretti. Time to finish the job. Agents moved forward. Vincent stopped, leaning on cane, but meeting the eyes steadily. Tell your people, he said calmly. The war's over. I'm out. Leave it. The car idled. Some debts don't end. It sped away as backup arrived. Vincent returned, pale, pain flaring. Elena waited on the porch, face tight with fear and fury. You can't keep doing this, she said, voice trembling but strong. I have to show them I'm not afraid. She stepped close, hands on his arms. You don't have to show anyone anything anymore. Let me protect you now. The words hung, electric. Role reversal complete. Poor Waitress standing guard over fallen king. That night, storm broke, heavy rain lashing windows. Vincent woke in agony, old wounds screaming. Elena entered his room without hesitation, sitting on the bed edge, cool cloth to his forehead. Breathe, she whispered. He gripped her hand, eyes locked. Love surged, passionate, desperate. Elena, he rasped. I love you. I've loved you from the first night in the snow. Shock numbed her, then warmth flooded, fierce and deep. Tears fell. I know, she whispered. I was afraid to believe it. Silence stretched, thunder fading. In the quiet, something shifted irrevocably. Vincent's empire was ash, wealth gone, power stripped. Yet in the small safe house, with Elena's hand in his and Luca's soft breathing down the hall, he felt richer than ever. The reversal had saved him, not from bullets, but from despair. Elena lay awake later, Vincent asleep beside her on the couch where pain kept him from stairs. She watched his face relax for the first time in months, scars silver in moonlight. The inner tearing quieted to a steady ache, fear lingering but love burning brighter. From cold winds and empty cupboards to this, protecting the man who once protected her. Outside, rain softened to mist. City lights glimmered distant and indifferent. The fall was over. What rose between them, fragile, fierce, real, was only beginning. September heat lingered in Chicago like an uninvited guest, the air thick and restless. The safe house on the west side had become a small island of routine. Simple meals shared at a Formica table, Luca's laughter echoing in the narrow hallway as he played with secondhand toys. Quiet evenings on the porch, watching sunset paint the modest backyard gold. Vincent Moretti's recovery progressed slowly, scars tightening, strength returning in measured steps. He walked without the cane now, helped with dishes despite Elena's protests, read bedtime stories to Luca with a voice that grew steadier each night. The man who once ruled the city learned to find peace in ordinary moments, yet the inner storm never fully quieted. Remorse for lost lives and shattered loyalties gnawed relentlessly. Guilt over the dangers still shadowing them warred with passionate love for Elena, fierce, burning, the anchor keeping him afloat. Elena Harper had settled into her role as quiet guardian with a strength she barely recognized in herself. The church basement housing fell through when funding cuts closed the program. Another absurd, crushing unfairness. She and Luca returned to the safe house permanently, agents quietly approving the arrangement. Poverty's ghosts followed, a rejection letter for food assistance citing unstable address history. Luca's school delaying enrollment over missing records. Elena stood in the kitchen late one night, reading the letters by weak bulb light, dizziness washing over her as tears fell silently. From freezing shelters and empty cupboards to this, protected yet still chased by want. The contrast tore at her soul. Vincent's fallen wealth once infinite, her poverty never fully escaped. Yet in caring for him, she found purpose. She coaxed him through physical therapy, held ice to swelling scars, refused to let despair settle. When nightmares woke him, Sophia calling from flames, she sat beside the bed, hand in his, until breathing slowed. The role reversal had become natural. She the steady one, he the vulnerable. Love grew in quiet layers, her protectiveness fierce, his gratitude passionate and deep. One humid evening, tension outside escalated. Agents reported increased surveillance, unmarked cars circling the block, unfamiliar faces at the corner store. Genovese holdouts, enraged by territory losses from Vincent's testimony, sought final revenge. Vincent paced the small living room, face grim. "I need to draw them out," he told Elena quietly. "End this." Fear flashed in her eyes. "No, we stay safe, together." He stopped, cupping her face gently. "I won't lose you, either of you." The words carried everything. Love burning since the first snowy night, now desperate to protect what remained. That night, thunder growled distant. Vincent slept fitfully. Elena lay awake beside Luca down the hall, heart uneasy. At 3 a.m, the ambush came. Windows shattered, doors splintered. Masked figures, 3, professional, burst in with military precision. Agents outside returned fire. Chaos erupted. Vincent woke instantly, grabbing the authorized handgun from the nightstand drawer. Pain flared in old wounds, but adrenaline surged. "Elena, Luca, closet, now!" He moved into the hallway, shielding their room. Bullets tore plaster. One intruder advanced, weapon raised. Vincent fired controlled shots, forcing retreat, buying seconds. Elena, heart pounding with horror, pushed Luca into the bedroom closet, covering him with blankets. "Stay quiet, baby. Mommy's here." She grabbed the backup pistol Vincent had taught her to use, small, hidden in a kitchen drawer for emergencies. Hands shaking but steady enough, she stepped into the hall. Vincent fought in the living room, weakened but fierce, taking cover behind overturned furniture, returning fire. An intruder flanked him, knife glinting. Vincent turned too late. The blade slashed deep. A second shot grazed his side. He went down hard, blood pooling. Elena saw it from the hallway shadows. Shock numbed her, dizziness threatening balance, world tilting. Vincent on the floor, bleeding, reaching weakly for his weapon. The assassin advanced to finish. Time slowed. Elena raised the pistol, hands trembling violently, tears blurring vision. Fear and love collided in a fierce, burning surge. She fired. The intruder fell. Sirens wailed closer. Remaining attackers fled into night. Agents stormed in, securing the house. Elena dropped the weapon, rushing to Vincent. She pressed hands to wounds, blood warm on her palms, screaming his name. "Vincent, stay with me, please!" He opened pain-glazed eyes, finding hers. Love blazed through agony. "You saved me," he whispered. Again. Paramedics arrived in chaos. Compressions, IVs, shouted orders. Elena rode in the ambulance, Luca with agents behind. She held Vincent's hand, refusing to let go, tears falling on his bloodied shirt. In the emergency room, doctors fought. Surgery for the knife wound, transfusions for blood loss. Elena waited in a plastic chair, numb and shaking. Luca curled asleep against her. Horror tore at her. Vincent dying because enemies hunted him, because she had entered his life. Yet the memory of pulling the trigger, saving him, brought fierce resolve. Role reversal complete. Poor, once powerless woman, now willing to kill to protect the man she loved. Hours later, a surgeon emerged. He's stable, critical, but he'll make it. Relief crashed with violent sobs. Elena entered the recovery room. Vincent pale under fluorescent lights, monitors steady. He woke slowly, eyes finding hers instantly. "Elena." She took his hand, voice soft but strong. "I'm here." Love shone between them, passionate, equal now. He, the fallen king, rescued twice. She, the quiet heroine who refused to let him fall. Outside, dawn broke over the city. Federal teams swept the area. Genevieve's remnants scattered or arrested. The final ambush had ended the war. Vincent's survival and Elena's shot breaking the last resolve. Rosa arrived later, embracing Elena with tears and gratitude. "You gave him back his life," she whispered. Elena shook her head. "He gave me mine first." In quiet days of recovery, Vincent lay in the hospital bed, Elena beside him constantly. The inner tearing quieted to steady ache, remorse for past violence fading against the miracle of present love. One afternoon, sunlight slanting through blinds, he spoke. "I have nothing left, Elena. No empire, no wealth, just me." She met his eyes, love burning fierce in return. "That's everything," she whispered. He pulled her gently close, careful of IVs, scars, and kissed her for the first time. Soft, then deepening, passionate, desperate, years of restraint exploding into truth. Outside, Chicago moved on, traffic humming, lake sparkling. Inside the room, two souls once torn by unfair worlds found each other completely. The ultimate sacrifice had been made, not in death, but in choosing life together. Poor waitress and fallen boss, rescuer and rescued, intertwined forever. The ambush was over. Healing, real, hard-won, had begun. October winds swept gently across northern Wisconsin, carrying the scent of pine and turning leaves into flames of red and gold. The small lakeside house, new identities, modest but paid for outright from Vincent's last legitimate sale, stood quiet against the water, windows glowing warm against early dusk. Vincent Moretti, once untouchable king of Chicago's shadows, now walked the wooden dock in flannel and jeans, scars hidden beneath soft cotton. Strength had returned fully, pain only a faint echo on cold mornings. Wealth was gone, accounts emptied, empire dissolved, but peace, hard-won and real, had taken its place. Elena Harper stood in the kitchen, stirring soup on a simple stove, Luca beside her on a stool reaching for carrots to chop. Her frame had filled out with steady meals. Color returned to cheeks once pale from hunger. The church basement, eviction notices, cold shelter nights, they felt like another lifetime. Yet memory lingered, a quiet teacher. She caught herself sometimes touching the warm radiator in disbelief, or counting pantry shelves to be sure food would last. Poverty's scars ran deep, but love had begun to heal them. The journey north had been deliberate. After the final ambush, federal protection eased, Genovese remnants scattered or imprisoned. Vincent's full cooperation earned leniency. No charges, new names, relocation stipend. He chose Wisconsin, far enough for safety, close enough for Rosa to visit by train. The house was small, 3 bedrooms, wraparound porch, dock stretching into clear water. No marble, no guards, no skyline view, just space to breathe. Elena hesitated at first. In the hospital, after Vincent's whispered, "I love you," she had pulled back gently, fear, confusion, the violent tear of believing herself unworthy. A woman who once skipped meals to feed her child, how could she stand beside a man who had owned the world? Nights in the safe house, she lay awake beside Luca, heart pounding with dizzying questions. Love for Vincent burned fierce in return, but doubt numbed her. Wealth and poverty, power and powerlessness, could they truly meet as equals? Vincent felt the same storm. He watched her care for him through recovery, quiet strength, gentle hands, and remorse tore deeper, for nearly dragging her into death, for the danger his past still cast. Yet every touch, every shared glance, ignited passionate fire. Love, immediate from that snowy night, now matured through mutual rescue, demanded honesty. He waited, patient, proving worth not with money, but presence. One crisp September evening, as leaves began to turn, barriers shattered. They sat on the dock after Luca slept, lake lapping softly. Vincent spoke first, voice low, raw. "I was afraid you'd leave, that you'd decide I wasn't worth the risk." Elena turned, eyes shining in moonlight. "I was afraid you'd wake up one day and see only the poor waitress who screamed in a restaurant." He took her hand. "I see the woman who saved my life, twice, who gave me a reason to become someone better." Silence stretched, electric. She leaned closer, voice trembling but sure. "I love you, Vincent. I have for longer than I admitted." The words unleashed everything. He pulled her into his arms, gentle at first, mindful of old scars, then deeper, desperate. The kiss began soft, then exploded, passionate, intense, years of restraint burning away. Hands tangled in hair, bodies pressed close on the cool wood, lake wind carrying their whispered names. Love, fierce from the first moment, now fully claimed, consumed them under stars. They made love on a blanket beneath pines, slow then urgent, tears mingling with laughter, every touch a promise, wealth and poverty, power and powerlessness, none of it separated true hearts. Winter came gentle. Vincent consulted remotely for private security, legitimate, quiet work using old knowledge for protection, not harm. Elena opened a tiny lakeside cafe with community help. Coffee, homemade soup, bookshelves for locals to linger. Luca thrived in a small school, calling Vincent Dad without hesitation. Rosa moved nearby, gardening and spoiling her grandson. Life was not grand, but rich. They argued sometimes, passionate voices over money or safety, but always reconciled fiercer, love explosive and renewing. On cold nights, Elena traced Vincent's scars. He kissed the faint lines hunger once etched on her wrists. Disparity remained in memory, but compassion bridged it fully. Love blind to skin, status, past. One golden October afternoon, the year still 2026, Vincent led Elena to the dock, blindfolded. Luca giggled nearby, holding flowers. He removed the cloth. A simple gold band rested in his palm, forged from Sophia's melted ring and new metal, past and future united. "Marry me," he said, voice thick, "not because I can give you the world, I can't anymore, but because I want to build one with you, every day." Tears fell as she whispered yes. Luca ran forward, hugging them both. That evening they celebrated quietly, soup from the cafe, Rosa's homemade bread, laughter echoing over water. Vincent held Elena close as stars appeared, love burning steady and bright. This story teaches us profound knowledge about the human heart, knowledge that true wealth lies not in money but in compassion, knowledge that love crosses every divide, skin color, past mistakes, rich or poor. It offers a vital lesson in courage, the lesson that one quiet voice can change everything. It reminds us of the education found in loss, education that power without kindness is empty, that poverty endured with dignity is noble. Another lesson appears in mutual rescue, the lesson that strength is shared, roles can reverse, and love deepens through sacrifice. Finally, it imparts knowledge and education in forgiveness. Knowledge that remorse can lead to redemption. Education that second chances build the strongest bonds. Love, this story shows, needs no wealth to flourish, only open hearts willing to protect and be protected. If this tale moved you, please subscribe to the channel Alex Truths, like this video, and share it with someone who needs its message. We bring engaging stories every day to touch hearts and spread hope. Tell us in the comments, how did this story make you feel? Have you seen love overcome great differences in real life? Share your thoughts. We truly listen to the emotions deep within your hearts. Wishing everyone watching good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. See you in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.